was a strange time for me.
Thank you. Well, it's great to meet you, man. I'm looking forward to getting into your latest album, your world of music. So thank you for taking a minute out.
You bet.
So let's begin. Before we get into Crazy That Way, I want to know, living through this pandemic as a musician was quite a thing. How did you survive the pandemic, and how many reverberations from living through that period influences the way that you do things now?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, I was when the pandemic started, I was living in Midtown Manhattan, and of course, that was the epicenter of everything.
Yeah.
Constant sirens, banging pots and pans. I think it was at 5 o'clock to thank the healthcare workers, and it was quite a thing. I coined a term proximophobia because you would walk down the sidewalk. If somebody was coming the other way, you'd cross the street because
Uh-huh.
we just didn't know.
Yeah.
So that was a thing. And I was fortunate to have a house in upstate New York, up in the mountains, just a mountain cabin. And so my wife and I moved up there for most of the pandemic. And so I, very quickly got, Zoomified and upgrade. Actually, before even in Manhattan, I got a USB mic and got equipped, got a better interface and so on to be able to do remote things. And so I kept pretty busy doing Zoom workshops, and then I started recording um, songs, pretty much new songs as I wrote them, and you know just me and a keyboard and putting them out there with some commentary. So
Yeah.
that was really how I coped, and it was there was a lot of, I'm sure you remember, there's a lot of community that was formed across the country, other musicians and singers I wouldn't probably otherwise have met if we hadn't been formed into more of a national or global community by the pandemic.
Yeah. So Crazy That Way is your second album. Talk to me a little bit about the artistic forces that went into creating this.
The artistic forces, well, I think the main force was my producer, Dori Amarillo, who is an amazing one-stop shop. I worked with him as my arranger. He produced the album, recruited the 20, if you count backup singers and guest vocalists, there were 20 musicians on the album. He recorded it in his studio. He mixed it. Um, had some videos. It's a videographer come in. He edited those videos. Um, so I have to give him, a lot of credit. It's almost like both of our albums. But in terms of other, by forces, you mean, human forces?
Just the kind of the creative juices, the vision that went into making it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had moved to LA at that point, about about a year ago. Is that right? Yeah, and I was fortunate to have met Dory, and I also was working with a great singer and connector of LA jazz people, Kathy Siegel Garcia,
Yeah.
who so the two of them kind of encouraged me to get together with Dory. I played some songs. He said, "Well, I love this. This is different than a lot of the stuff I work on." And so we did 4 songs pretty quickly. And I was lucky to have Tawanda. I don't know if you know Tawanda. She's
Yeah.
really taken off since then. She's
Uh-huh.
touring now as the featured vocalist on Postmodern Jukebox. But I had her as the guest vocalist, I'm sure you know, on the album.
Yeah.
We did 4 pretty quickly, and was thinking about just putting out an EP. And then I just kept writing, and I got on kind of a writing tear. And I'd say, well, okay, we can't put anything out until we add this song to the album. And then, well, let's, wait till there are 2 or 3 and we'll have another session. And then oh no, but it's here's another one. I got to add this. So, that's how I got to 12 cuts on the album. I just didn't feel like I was done until that next song was included. So I
Yeah.
think of the 12 songs on the album, nine were written in LA, and the other three I brought with me from New York.
So, what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
Well, I hope that lyrically, I like to think that even though, an album that's full of love songs isn't that unusual, I like to think there are, a lot of different takes on kind of the life cycle of love. There's a song about, first meeting and falling in love. There's a song about, you know, affirming kind of the enduring passion of a long-term relationship. There's love in the middle. There's love being crazy. So I think it's kind of a tour of that topic in a way, and that just kind of happened. I have a relatively new marriage, so I'm still a little bit in the honeymoon period of writing. Um, you Are Everything to Me, which is I think the most romantic ballad, was written specifically at my wife's request. She said, "Okay, Mr. Songwriter, we've been married for a while. Where is my romantic ballad?" So that was all the prompt I needed for that one. So lyrically, that's it. And then I think musically, it's both a strength and a weakness, I guess, in commercial terms. But as I'm sure you noticed, there's a lot of variety. There's big band jazz. There's what is virtually a disco tune. There's a kind of a gospelish anthem. So there's a bossa. So, I like to think that it, demonstrates my versatility as a writer and gives the listener, a lot of different, feelings and experiences to have as
So,
a thing.
yeah. So, what was it like to go from New York to LA? I always hear I mean, what kind of culture shock, what kind of change? How has that worked for you?
Yeah, I grew up in the Midwest, but I moved to New York when I was 21 and became just, a rabid New Yorker and really couldn't imagine living anywhere outside Manhattan. And certainly, I visited LA a few times. I traveled a lot on business, but really never, not much to LA. And so I always thought, well, maybe I could live in Santa Monica or something, but I really wouldn't see myself living in LA. And then when I was married, my wife, of now 7 years, is in the TV business, and she'd spent about half her life here. So I started making trips out here with her. She had two kids here and so on. So I was kind of getting acclimated. So when the granddaughter was born, and we were still living in upstate New York, it was kind of like, well, okay, I see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
We're moving to LA. And, maybe it's a good time to, being upstate for a year and during the pandemic and everything was kind of a halfway sort of interregnum.
Yeah.
So we moved in October of 21, and it's really been a very pleasant, I don't know if I should say surprise, but I immediately kind of found my tribe of jazz vocalists and musicians, and did went to every open mic that I could find, and met a lot of great people there. So the LA, jazz and singer community has really embraced me, I have to say. I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
And the traffic's not nearly as bad as I expected, as long as you're not driving in rush hour,
Yeah.
and I don't mind the weather, so it's all
Yeah,
good.
absolutely. Yeah, that's good. So let me ask you this. Take me back to your Midwestern roots. How did music and more specifically jazz kind of become the world that you got into?
Well, I mean, I have to start by saying I was relatively late to really thinking myself as being, in some way a jazz musician. I got a clarinet for Christmas and when I was 8, and kind of took to that. I started piano lessons at 9 with kind of the local piano teacher. And I always say that I was really fortunate in that because I was, pretty self-confident little 9-year-old. And I said, okay, Mrs. Anderson, I do not want to be a classical pianist. I am not going to practice scales all day long. I want to play music I like. And she said, well, okay, Mr. Sieck, we'll split every lesson in half. We'll make half, two clefs and play classical music, and the other half, I'll write out the melody and chords to popular songs and show you how to do that. In other words, she was writing lead sheets, although I didn't know that term at the time. So that really opened things up for me to be creative. I think like a year or two later, I played my arrangement of Theme from Exodus at a school assembly, and I think to this day, really, that's sort of, even though I have a degree in composition and whatnot, that's really kind of the foundation of my writing is being able to you know play from chord charts at a relatively young age. So I was in a a number of rock cover bands in beginning in junior high and high school, and touring Iowa, playing dances and fraternity parties and what have you. And I went to the University of Iowa, went through a bunch of different majors, finally landed on music because that was the one thing I knew I'd probably always be interested in.
Yeah.
And who knew what this was the late 60s, early 70s, when we didn't really know what the world would be like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I had occasion to visit a cousin in New York and fell under the spell of Manhattan, transferred to City University, and that's where I got my music degree. But again, I was doing more pop stuff and kind of struggling in the lower rungs of the music business in New York, and writing some songs, but I decided to keep that to myself. Had a business career, actually a very demanding one, as it ended up as a management consultant. And music was just something I did at parties
Yeah.
and coming home and blowing off steam. And so at I guess about maybe 20 years ago, I decided that one thing that happened was that my first wife passed away in 2005, and I got involved with a very famous sort of cultural center church in New York called St. Mark's Church in the Bowery, where I don't know, Isadora Duncan danced, and I mean, I could go on and on, but it's a real cultural center, and I lived across the street from it. And so I decided to join the choir there with all my new free time, and I played some of my songs for the choral director. She said, "Oh, those are fantastic. You got to do those in the it's part of the service." So I started doing that. I started arranging for gospel choir, which was a lot of fun, and so that kind of relaunched me into a very active musical life. At one point, she said, "Hey, Steve, and there were always concerts in the sanctuary. It was almost as much a concert hall as a church." She said, "We just had a cancellation for the summer. Why don't you do a show?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all the standards that I'm attracted to seem to be about, existential angst and being lost in the universe and so on. And I sometimes thought if I ever did a show, I would call it Complaint Letters to God." And she said, "That's great. You should write that song." So I went home and did and wrote Complaint Letters to God, which is on the first album.
Yeah.
And that was my first real, I don't know if you'd call it a cabaret show, but again, it was kind of a mix of R&B and pop and some jazzier stuff. Um, I also had kind of a turning point moment around the same time where I went to a vocal. Well, it was a place called Omega Institute in upstate New York, which is kind of a place where people go to do yoga and meditation and new agey kinds of stuff. And I saw it advertised a weekend called Find Your Natural Voice, and I thought, oh, it'd be fun to just go up and sing in the country for a weekend, basically. And so we did our introductions, and I gave my sort of musical bio, and the workshop leader said, "Hey, so when was the last time you wrote a song, Steve?" And I said, "Oh, it's about 20 years ago at that point." And he said, "You should write a song tonight. Call it, I don't know, call it Better Late Than Never." And so I went back to the cabin, wrote Better Late Than Never, which was actually the title of my first real cabaret show in New York, and also on that first album. So that was kind of, I had up to then I had thought of myself mostly as a a composer working with lyricists, and that lyric came so naturally and so easily and was so well received um, the next day that I thought, okay, there's something here. I need to honor this gift of writing music and lyrics. And so again, that was a real pivotal moment. And I haven't really stopped writing songs since then.
So, what was the first live show that you saw that really inspired you, that made you think maybe you would want to do that someday, just captivated you?
Huh, I don't know, probably seeing The Doors.
Okay.
Um, how old was I then? In high school. Uh, yeah, probably freshman, sophomore in high school. Um, Growing up in Des Moines, there wasn't a lot of jazz.
Yeah.
Um, I discovered more obviously in college where uh, exposed to stuff, but I would listen to a jazz station out of Chicago because that was really um, the closest place that really had a good jazz radio.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the reason that it's been a little bit delayed, but um, I don't know. In my 20s, certainly I discovered jazz and was, listening to a lot of jazz, not exclusively, but, there were a couple of Betty Carter albums that I wore out in college. And, I was listening to everything. Um, and then, of course, moving to New York at 21 and going, oh my God, the Village Vanguard, the
Yep.
Blue Note, the um, later Village Gate. It's just the people. You look back now at the newspaper advertisements of what was going on then, and just there's like 20 giants of jazz playing any given night. It was really an amazing scene. So that was certainly influential.
Absolutely. So, what do you like the best about being a professional musician? What do you look forward to every day?
I my big thrill is finishing a song
Yeah.
and feeling that satisfaction. So, I look forward to getting to that point. I also, really enjoy performing. Tonight I'll be going to kind of my regular Tuesday night open mic and singing an arrangement of the Christmas Waltz, which is a cool jazz waltz Christmas song. I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of fun with that. And now that this album is out and getting a lot of great reaction, it's kind of building and building, and I'm putting out videos now almost every day and so on. So I'm setting up to do 3 shows at a club called the Gardenia, January, February, March. I'm going to kind of do different aspects of my catalog each of those nights. It's kind of a big gulp. I did have a great CD launch show at Catalina, which is really the largest jazz club in LA, and that
Yeah.
that was great. That's where a lot of the videos are coming from. So I'm hoping to do a lot more playing out, which as a songwriter, I mean, it's obviously easier to get gigs if you're singing standards and it's easy for people to relate to. As a singer-songwriter, it's a little different in terms of gigging. Uh, but I'm hoping to do a bunch of that and just continue recording new songs. I've got I'm going to have enough for another album. I don't think I'll take that big of a bite right away, but I definitely will record probably some new singles. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to in the new year. More playing out,
Yeah.
more recording. Um, getting better at social media, which just seems like it's like half a musician's job these days.
Yeah, pretty much.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
So everyone out there, after all this time, has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, everyone that you work with, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am?
Yeah.
Who do I think I am? Um, I just realized that. Oh no. Anyway, who do I think I am? Uh, I think I'm a songwriter who sings. I think I'm pretty talented weaver of melody and lyric that reinforce each other. Um, I do think that's one of my real strengths, and people point that out that, the music is telling the same story as the lyric, as it goes, which isn't usually the case, actually.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe something that separates me a little bit from other writers particularly in the jazz genre. Um, but yeah, I'm basically a semi-retired consultant who's enjoying. My friend Mark Winkler, put out an album, Late Blooming Jazz Man.
Yeah.
So I'm a late blooming uh, jazz man in that sense, or late blooming jazz writer, and you know, very happy and grateful to be in that position at this point in my life.
So Crazy That Way is the new album. If anyone wants to pick it up, where's the best place for them to go to get it?
Best place, I'd say there are two places. One would be my website, stevesieckmusic.com. So you can, listen to it for free there, or you can, buy a download or buy the CD. It's a very nice CD, fold out, great photography. Or you can go to Bandcamp and buy it there. Obviously, I'd love it if people buy it, but of course it's on Spotify and Apple and Tidal and Amazon and everywhere as most people do these days. So yeah, it's pretty easy to find. I've got a pretty unusual name, so go find it, and I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have. Steve, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. I appreciate it. Have a great holiday season.
Thank you very much for having me, Jim.